Let's get real for a second. Manipulators are everywhere. Not just in movies or shady office politics, but in real life, often closer than you think. And here's a truth most guys don't want to face. Being manipulated doesn't always mean you're weak. Sometimes it's just that you haven't recognized the signs yet, or you're giving people the benefit of the doubt when you shouldn't. That's where things get dangerous, because manipulators don't ask permission. They exploit your habits, your kindness, your patience, and even your pride, twisting situations to get what they want. Here's the kicker. Most men don't even realize they're being manipulated until it's too late. And by then, relationships are strained, careers are at risk, and confidence takes a hit. But what if you could spot these tactics early? What if you could read people like a book and neutralize manipulation before it even takes hold? That's exactly what we're diving into today. This isn't about becoming paranoid or seeing enemies everywhere. It's about being smart, aware, and a few steps ahead of anyone trying to control you. We're going to break down 7 powerful ways to outsmart manipulators. Techniques that aren't flashy or overcomplicated, but highly effective. You'll learn how to protect your mind, your decisions, and your life from people who thrive on bending others to their will. By the end, you'll have practical strategies you can start using immediately and a mindset shift that makes you much harder to manipulate. So if you've ever felt someone was pulling strings behind the scenes, whether at work, in friendships, or even in relationships, this video is for you. Welcome to the channel. Stick with me, because by the time we're done, you'll see manipulation for what it really is, and you'll be ready to take control without guilt, without hesitation, and without drama. 1. Stop playing their game. Here's the hard truth. Manipulators win when you play by their rules. They set the board, define what fair looks like, and then use your reactions against you. The first step to outsmarting them is realizing you don't have to play at all. You don't have to meet their expectations, answer every demand, or get sucked into arguments that don't serve you. When you stop playing their game, you take away their power. Think about it. Imagine a coworker who constantly criticizes your work but frames it as helpful advice. Every time you defend yourself, you're reacting on their terms. Every time you apologize or explain excessively, you're validating their tactics. The moment you recognize this and step back, you can choose whether to respond, how to respond, or even if you respond at all. That's the shift. It's not about being rude or passive. It's about being strategic. You control your energy, your attention, and your emotions instead of letting someone else do it for you. One key aspect of this is identifying the patterns manipulators use. They often try to provoke guilt, fear, or obligation. They might use charm to distract you or aggression to intimidate you. Whatever the tactic, the principle is the same. They want you reacting, not thinking. The more conscious you are of these patterns, the easier it is to disengage. You don't have to justify yourself, explain yourself, or chase validation. When you refuse to get pulled into their game, you make them work harder to control you, and most won't bother. Another part of stopping the game is owning your priorities. Manipulators thrive when you let them dictate where your time, attention, and energy go. If someone constantly demands your resources or expects you to compromise your standards, recognize it for what it is and pull back. You don't need to make excuses or feel guilty. Your life, your rules. When you stop playing on their field, you create space to act deliberately, make clear decisions, and avoid traps that cost you more than they're worth. Ultimately, stopping the game is about clarity and control. You see the manipulation for what it is, you refuse to engage on the manipulator's terms, and you set the pace. It's not easy at first, because manipulators are skilled at pushing buttons. But once you commit to disengaging from their tactics and responding on your own terms, you'll notice something powerful. They lose interest and you gain respect, from yourself first and from others second. This is the foundation of outsmarting manipulators. You can't win if you're still playing by their rules. The moment you stop, the whole dynamic changes. 2. Master the art of saying no. Saying no is one of the simplest yet most overlooked tools you have against manipulators. Most men have been conditioned to say yes. Yes to requests, yes to pressure, yes to avoid conflict. That automatic compliance is exactly what manipulators rely on. They know if they push hard enough, you'll fold, and then they'll use that yes as proof that you're easy to control. Learning to say no and saying it confidently is like flipping the power switch back on. Here's the thing. Saying no doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't mean you're selfish or unkind. It means you respect your own time, energy, and boundaries. Manipulators count on guilt to keep you in line. They'll make you feel bad for refusing, act shocked, or try to twist your no into a yes. Recognize that their reaction is part of the manipulation. They want to see if you can be pushed. Your job is to stay firm without over-explaining or justifying yourself. A simple, clear no is often all that's needed. It helps to be direct. Don't waffle. Don't soften it with endless excuses. A weak no gives manipulators room to negotiate or guilt you into changing your mind. Strong, calm, and straightforward is far more effective. You can even practice it in everyday life. Refuse small favors or interruptions first. The more comfortable you get with saying no in low-stakes situations, the easier it becomes when a manipulator tries to corner you in higher-stakes scenarios. Another key point is timing. Manipulators often attack when you're tired, stressed, or distracted. That's when you're most likely to say yes automatically. Recognizing this pattern allows you to pause before responding. Take a breath, think it through, and then respond decisively. You don't need to react immediately to every request or demand. Your pause is a powerful tool. It shows that you are not easily pushed around. Finally, understand that saying no can even earn you respect. People, including manipulators, notice when someone refuses to be controlled without anger, defensiveness, or drama. It sets a tone that you won't be played, and it encourages healthier interactions overall. Mastering the art of no is not just about defense, it's about establishing authority over your own life and decisions. Once you embrace it, manipulators start losing interest, and you regain control over your time, your choices, and your mindset. Saying no is simple, but it's not easy at first. It takes practice, patience, and the willingness to put yourself first. But once you get it down, it becomes one of your most powerful tools against anyone trying to manipulate you. 3. Read people like a book. One of the most powerful skills you can develop against manipulators is the ability to read people accurately. Most men get caught off guard because they take what others say at face value or assume everyone has good intentions. Manipulators count on that. They rely on your assumptions, your trust, and your tendency to give people the benefit of the doubt. Learning to read people like a book puts you several steps ahead. Start by paying attention to actions over words. Manipulators are often very persuasive speakers, full of charm and convincing arguments, but their actions rarely align with their words. If someone repeatedly promises one thing but does another, that's a red flag. Notice patterns, not isolated incidents. One slip-up might be innocent, but consistent behavior tells the real story. Body language is another huge indicator. Manipulators often exhibit subtle signs of dishonesty or control tactics. Shifts in posture, avoiding eye contact when making claims, or over-the-top gestures to emphasize points can signal they're not being genuine. Learning to pick up on these cues helps you sense manipulation before it escalates. It's not about becoming paranoid, it's about being observant and aware. Listen carefully to what people are asking for or expecting. Manipulators tend to phrase requests in ways that trigger your emotions, guilt, fear, or obligation. They might make you feel like saying no is selfish or unreasonable. When you recognize this, you can detach emotionally and evaluate the request logically. The clearer you are about what they want versus what they actually need, the less likely you are to fall into their trap. Another key point is to trust your gut. Men often ignore subtle instincts because they don't want to confront uncomfortable truths. But if something feels off, it probably is. Manipulators are skilled at creating confusion and doubt, making you second-guess yourself. Trusting your intuition, backed by careful observation, allows you to stay one step ahead. Finally, pay attention to consistency in relationships. Manipulators often show different faces depending on who they're dealing with. If someone's behavior shifts dramatically between situations, or if they treat people differently to get what they want, that's a clear signal. Reading people like a book is not about being suspicious of everyone. It's about equipping yourself with the ability to detect manipulation before it costs you. 4. Control your emotional reactions. Manipulators thrive on emotion. They know that the moment you react impulsively, angry, defensive, or guilty, they've gained leverage over you. The more volatile your response is, the easier it is for them to steer the situation their way. That's why controlling your emotional reactions is not just helpful. It's essential if you want to outsmart them. The first step is awareness. You need to recognize when someone is trying to provoke you. Manipulators often use subtle tactics, passive-aggressive comments, guilt-tripping, or exaggeration designed to get a rise out of you. If you catch yourself feeling irritated, defensive, or anxious around a certain person, that's a sign they might be pushing emotional buttons. Awareness gives you a pause, a moment to choose your response rather than react automatically. Next, practice emotional detachment. This doesn't mean becoming cold or indifferent. It means keeping your mind clear while your emotions stay in check. When someone tries to manipulate you, take a breath, step back, and process the situation logically. Ask yourself, what is this person really trying to achieve? How does this affect me? By focusing on facts instead of feelings, you prevent manipulators from using your emotions against you. Another key point is managing your triggers. Everyone has weak spots, things that make us react instinctively. Manipulators are experts at identifying these triggers and exploiting them. Knowing your own triggers is like knowing your own vulnerabilities, and once you're aware, you can put measures in place to avoid being baited. Simple techniques like pausing before speaking, counting to 10, or walking away temporarily can make a huge difference in maintaining control. It also helps to shift your focus from winning an argument to controlling the interaction. Many men feel the need to prove themselves when challenged, which manipulators use against them. Instead of trying to fight or justify yourself, stay calm and deliberate. Respond with neutral statements, redirect the conversation, or simply refuse to engage emotionally. The less fuel you give, the weaker their manipulation becomes. Finally, remember that self-control is a long-term advantage. Manipulators may get quick wins with people who react impulsively, but someone who remains composed becomes increasingly difficult to manipulate. You don't just protect yourself in the moment. You build a reputation that discourages manipulation in the first place. Controlling your emotional reactions is a skill, and like any skill, it gets stronger with practice. The more you master it, the more power you reclaim over your interactions and your life. 5. Use silence as a weapon. Silence is one of the most underestimated tools in dealing with manipulators. Most people feel the need to fill the gaps in conversation, to explain themselves, or to justify their decisions. Manipulators count on that. Every word you speak can be twisted, used against you, or baited into an argument. Learning to use silence strategically gives you control and puts pressure back on them. Imagine a situation where someone at work constantly tries to pressure you into taking on extra responsibilities. They argue, guilt trip, and act like it's a team effort while really offloading their work onto you. Instead of immediately defending yourself or saying yes, you stay quiet. You let them talk, over-explain, and expose their own tactics without you needing to engage. Silence makes them uncomfortable because manipulators thrive on reactions. When you don't react, they start to unravel. Silence also gives you space to think. Manipulators want you to respond emotionally and impulsively. A pause allows you to evaluate the situation logically. You can weigh your options, consider your boundaries, and decide on a response that protects your interests. The more you practice it, the more natural it becomes to pause, listen, and respond deliberately rather than being pushed around. Another powerful aspect of silence is its subtle authority. When you stop trying to convince or justify yourself, it signals confidence. Manipulators pick up on this. Someone who talks too much, constantly defends themselves, or over-explains comes across as vulnerable. Silence, on the other hand, communicates control and self-assurance without saying a word. People notice, respect, and often back off when they realize they aren't going to get a reaction. It's important to combine silence with observation. While you're quiet, pay attention to what the manipulator is doing and saying. Look for patterns, inconsistencies, or over-the-top attempts to provoke. This is your opportunity to gather information, understand their strategy, and plan your next move. Silence isn't passive. It's an active tool that gives you clarity and leverage. Finally, don't be afraid of the tension silence can create. Manipulators rely on your discomfort to manipulate you. When you embrace silence and remain composed, you turn their tactic against them. They may escalate or push harder, but that only gives you more insight into their behavior. Using silence effectively is not just about avoiding traps. It's about controlling the conversation, protecting yourself, and letting the manipulator reveal themselves while you stay in charge. 6. Set boundaries. They can't cross boundaries are the backbone of protecting yourself from manipulators. Without them, you're constantly giving people room to push, guilt, and control you. Most men struggle with this because they confuse boundaries with being rigid or unkind. The truth is, strong boundaries are not only necessary, they earn you respect. Manipulators will test them, but clear, non-negotiable limits keep them from overstepping and keep you in control. Start by defining what you will and won't accept in your life. This applies to work, friendships, romantic relationships, and family. Think about your time, energy, and emotional resources. If someone repeatedly disrespects these, it's a sign you need to reinforce your boundaries. The clearer and more consistent you are, the harder it is for manipulators to bend you to their will. Next, communicate boundaries confidently and directly. You don't have to justify them, explain them endlessly, or apologize for them. A simple, firm statement works better than long-winded explanations. Manipulators often try to confuse you or guilt you into adjusting your limits. When your boundaries are clear, they know that pushing them is a losing game. Consistency is critical. If you allow exceptions, you send mixed signals and create loopholes manipulators will exploit. Boundaries also require enforcement. Saying no once isn't enough if you back down under pressure. Manipulators are persistent. They'll test, challenge, or escalate until they see a crack in your resolve. Enforcement doesn't mean confrontation or aggression. It means calmly holding your line. If someone continues to cross your boundaries, you limit your exposure to them, reduce interaction, or remove them from your environment entirely. Your boundaries are only as strong as your willingness to enforce them. 7. Take responsibility for your life. Here's a hard truth most men don't like to hear. Manipulators can only succeed if you allow them to. That means a huge part of outsmarting manipulation comes down to taking full responsibility for your own life. Too often, men blame others for their problems, get frustrated with circumstances, or let excuses run the show. Manipulators sense this immediately and use it to their advantage. The moment you own your decisions, your mistakes, and your boundaries, you strip them of control. Taking responsibility starts with self-awareness. Understand your weaknesses, triggers, and patterns. Recognize where you've allowed manipulation in the past and why. This isn't about shame, it's about clarity. When you know your own tendencies, you can anticipate how manipulators might try to exploit them and act before they gain an upper hand. Reflection is key here. You need to be brutally honest with yourself without being self-critical in a destructive way. Another part is accountability. Stop expecting others to validate your choices or fix your problems. Manipulators often create dependency, making you feel like you need their guidance, approval, or intervention. Break that pattern by making your own decisions and standing by them. When you take responsibility, you become less reactive, more decisive, and less vulnerable to manipulation. Men also need to recognize their role in patterns of manipulation. Sometimes a little ego, insecurity, or complacency invites manipulation in the first place. Maybe you avoid conflict, overcommit, or let your pride get in the way of clear judgment. Facing these truths isn't easy, but it's necessary. Waking up to how your own behaviors have enabled manipulation is empowering because it shows you what you can change. Taking responsibility also means being proactive rather than reactive. Don't wait for manipulators to act before you respond. Set your boundaries, practice saying no, and control your emotional reactions before situations spiral. Being proactive signals that you are in charge of your life, not someone else. Finally, this is about long-term growth. Life will always present challenges and difficult people. The men who thrive are the ones who accept responsibility for their own growth, decisions, and boundaries. Manipulators will lose influence when you refuse to outsource your power. Be honest with yourself, correct your mistakes, and take deliberate action. That's how you outsmart manipulation not just once, but consistently. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Manipulators don't go away. They adapt, they shift, and they test anyone who appears weak or unaware. The difference between being controlled and staying in charge comes down to mindset, awareness, and action. You've learned 7 powerful strategies to outsmart them. Stop playing their game, master the art of saying no, read people like a book, control your emotional reactions, use silence as a weapon, set boundaries they can't cross, and take responsibility for your life. These aren't just tips. They're a framework for reclaiming your power and protecting your energy. The most provocative part? Outsmarting manipulators isn't about beating them at their own game. It's about becoming the kind of man who they can't manipulate in the first place. When you are clear, composed, confident, and self-aware, manipulation loses its grip. You stop being an easy target, and your interactions shift from reactive to deliberate. That doesn't mean every manipulator will disappear overnight, but it does mean you're no longer vulnerable, and that's a game changer. I want to hear from you. Have you faced manipulative people in your life? How did you handle them, and what strategies worked or didn't work for you? Drop your experiences in the comments, and I'll personally engage with you. Sharing these stories helps everyone in this community learn, grow, and become sharper. Remember, manipulation thrives on silence, inaction, and unawareness. The moment you take control, set boundaries, and own your life, the dynamic changes entirely. You don't just survive manipulative situations, you thrive despite them. Take these strategies seriously, practice them consistently, and watch how much stronger, confident, and unshakable you become. Your next move matters. Don't just watch. Apply, reflect, and step into the version of yourself that manipulators can't touch.